I'm Owen and I was tasked with doing generation 1 and 2 of the video game consoles. This generation kicked off with the VFX Odyssey, made by the Sanders Association, released in 1972. It was powered by 6 C batteries and lacked sound capabilities and only displayed monochrome white objects, and was one game inspired off Pong, but you could put overlays on TV to act as if you were playing other games. It started the video game console generations and inspired a lot of others, including the Pong home console, which took heavy inspiration of the Magnavox. Released in 1975, Atari began production on an LCI chip, which cost a lot, till later down the line it was more easily produced and harder to reverse engineer. Though during its construction, Magnavox tried to do a lawsuit in April 1974 against the Pong home console due to infringement. So overview, Magnavox was the best-selling console with 35,000 units sold and started the interest in home generation consoles. Moving on to generation 2, starting with the Atari 2600, released in 1977, made by Atari, which was a 4-switch VCS model featuring 2 joystick controllers, and pair paddle controllers in a game cartridge. This system went over 8-bit MOS technology and 128 bytes of RAM memory. Though it did start the game class due to 14 truckloads of unsold Atari games and other equipment in a landfill in New Mexico deserts, labelled the video game burial. The Magnavox Odyssey also released its second one, which was developed by Magnavox Philips and the successor of the Magnavox Odyssey. It used a standard joystick design of that era, which was moderately sized, and the silver console was said to look like a typewriter. This included a full alphanumeric membrane keyboard, which was used for educational games. The hardware system included Intel 8048 CPU, 128 bytes of RAM memory, more than the 2600 of that era, and included 16 colours, which was more than the original Odyssey. So, an overview: the best-selling console was the Atari 2600, but this generation ended in disaster with the console crash due to the landfills. And the second generation saw an improvement across power and screen resolution.
This generation, the first one was the SG-1000, and it was developed in response to the downturn of arcade games in 1982. It was released in 1983, the same day the Nintendo Entertainment System was released, and it was came in several forms, including the SC3000, and there was a third iteration of it in 1985 with an improved custom video display processor and compared to previous iterations. The next one was the NES, or the Famicom. It was an 8-bit home video game console produced by Nintendo. It was released at the same time as SG-1000, and it was produced by Nintendo's president, Masahiro. It was regarded as the most influential one. It helped revitalize the gaming industry because of its games like Super Mario Bros., Legend of Zelda, and Mega Man. The next one was the Master Entertainment System, which was released in 1985 in Japan. It had new stuff, a few enhancements such as FM audio chip and a rapid-fire dedicated port for 3D glasses. It was released in competitor with the NES, although it failed to overcome Nintendo's share market. However, it regained greater success in other markets such as Europe, Australia, and South Korea, and it sold an estimated 10 to 13 million. Next was the Atari 788. 7800. It was released in 1986. It's a successor to the Atari 2600 and the Atari 520 200, with a different joystick than the 260 standard. Designed by the General Computer Corporation, and it had similar graphics to the 1980s arcade games. It was announced on May 21st, 1984, and it had a thinner design compared to other consoles in this generation. It was named its generation 4 was named as the 8-bit era, and it ended in 2003. And it ended the career of the video game market crash. Improved graphical and sound capabilities and innovation for more expansive game modes. The next one was the TurboGrafx 16, released in 1987 as a home video game console. It had an 8-bit central processing unit, and it was released as a competitor to Famicom, but ended up competing with the Sega Genesis instead. And it had an 8-bit CPU and a dual 16-bit GPU, and it was more successful in Japan than the US, which was considered as a market failure. Some inferior marketing. The next one was the Sega Genesis. It was released in 1988 as a third console successor to the Master System. It had a library of over 900 games on it, with several add-ons and different versions. In Japan, it fared poorly against the two main competitors, the Famicom and the Nintendo Entertainment System, or the NEC. Over 30.75 million Genesis units were sold worldwide, and the most popular game was Sonic the Hedgehog, and it triggered a fierce battle between the US and Europe, known as the console war. And the next one was the Super Famicom. It was released in 1990 in Japan and South Korea, distributed by Steepler in 1984 until 1966. It was Nintendo's second home console, and it introduced advanced graphics and sound capabilities compared to the other systems like the Sega Genesis. It had a variety of enhanced chips integrated into the cartridges, and it sold over 61.9 units in North America and Europe. Next one was the Neo Geo. It was released in 1990 by SNK Corporation. It was a very powerful system when released, more than any other video game console at the time. Over 1 million of this Neo Geo NBS's units were shipped, and 980,000 Neo Geo AS and CB units were sold combined. Due to the high demand and it being a luxury console, it was the most expensive home video game console ever to be produced, costing $649 or $1,454 in recent years. And then this is the overview. And the fourth generation was referred to as the 16-bit era, and sales rivaled between Nintendo and Sega a lot. And there was a fierce war between Sega and Sega. Several other companies released their consoles, but it was nothing compared to the main consoles of this generation. And yeah. The fourth generation had a few handhelds. It was the first generation of handhelds. It was released the Game Boy in 1989. Hiroshi said it was like mono-screen and too small processing power. By the end of the year, more than 1 million units were sold in the US for it, and the Game Boy was almost an immediate hit. It was better than the Atari Lynx, I think it was, which was Tire Links was the first ever handheld to have colour, and Links was considered a commercial failure due to it not being able to be supported with left-handed people.
Generation 5 lasted from 1993 to 1998 as well. It went in through other generations, the end of last one. But it was mainly PlayStation, Nintendo 64, and the main handheld generation, well, of this handheld generation, was the Game Boy Color. As you can see, the controllers above the consoles are starting to look quite similar, and it's going for the joystick and buttons pattern with obviously the Nintendo 64 quite a different controller, but that was a bit of an anomaly, and a lot of the other controllers followed the style of PlayStation, and that's where you start to see it in the future. And then a lot of 3D games were popular at this time, and it started to become a lot of the new games staying 3D. Generation 6, as you can see, the controllers share similar to last generation, and the Xbox controller is slightly different. The actual design of the consoles has chosen to become more of a blocky cube design with less colours, obviously other than the GameCube, focusing more on power and how well it can perform other than the actual console looks. With another thing, the growth of online play heavily affected the way that the consoles were made, because online play was very popular at this time, and it's started to become more normal for more games. The handheld consoles of this generation, the Game Boy Advance and the N-Gage. The N-Gage was a bit of a failure, but it might be a very start to what we see now, where its phones being used as the handheld consoles instead of new ones, and that was the earliest thing where it was a phone with games that was meant to be a console, but could be used as a phone as well.
So we come on to Generation 7, where we see most, like, I believe, prior generation, I think Nintendo is still using cartridges, but by now everyone's onto like disk drives and whatnot. And with disk drives came, like, larger storage for games, because like, I believe they can store more. Along with I think both Xbox and was it PS3 can support Blu-ray, which meant like consoles could be both gaming consoles and also like what's the word, like media centers, like so yeah, and the handhelds of this generation are like sold really well, and like some of the most famous handhelds of the ever. So we come into the Wii. The Wii, like all of Nintendo, has like very weird control scheme. It has the like the IR remote where you can like point it, like aim, and like a gyro, which was used especially in like the I think it was Motion Plus, which allowed for like games to kind of use you. Like I believe the catchphrase was "You were the controller," and for games like Mario Kart, they had like the wheel, and for like I believe Mario Galaxy, they had the nunchuck to allow for like 3D movement. The best-selling game was Wii Sports, which came with most new consoles, and the whole idea behind the Wii was to be like a casual console. Like it was less marketed towards like the previous consoles, and less targeted towards like hardcore gamers and people who are like looking for like the newest experience, and more towards like families and older people and kids who wanted to just play some tennis in their living room one day. Yeah. Then we come. I've mixed in the handheld and the regular consoles together. Then we come on to the DS/DSi, which was the I believe the best-selling no, it wasn't the best-selling. Sorry, got my facts mixed up there. But I believe it was like one of the, if not the best-selling handheld ever. It was the first handheld to have a touch screen, which, unlike its competitor, the PSP, didn't. Which allowed for games which like had a lot more interactivity. Like with Pokemon, you had like during the battles, you could use instead of using buttons to control it, you could use the button screen to like do your actions, or like in the menus, you could actually I think some you could, but in the newer Pokemon games, you could use the touchscreen to interact with the menus. Its control scheme is just standard for what most handhelds were at the time. D-pad, I believe no the Game Boys, which the Game Boy Advance, which had the start shot buttons, but continued shot buttons. Had stop select. Sorry about that. And the initial DS, this one here, this little ugly thing, it would it had physical backwards compatibility with Game Boy games. I think it was down to like Game Boy Color and Advance. I don't know, it might have been Advance. And then these three had software support. So if you, I believe they had software support. Where like you could like play it as long as you could get it onto the software. You could download it like on the software and not as a cartridge. And yeah, that's about it. And I believe the best-selling game was. Sorry, I forgot about it. I've forgotten completely about the best-selling game. I'm sorry, but it helped, as I talked about here. It helped create like new experiences for some of Nintendo's like most famous series like Pokemon. You had, this is my bias coming in here, but probably the best games like Black and White 2. You have like the new Mario games. I don't know if Mario Maker was on DS. I think that came out on the 3DS. You also have Zelda games which came on there as well. Then you come into the PlayStation 3, which had the original PlayStation 3, the Slim, and the Super Slim. I don't know if that's a proper good. The PS3 saw like a huge leap compared to like its like predecessor, with I believe being the most powerful home console of its generation. The improved performance allowed for like great detail on the games. Like I believe I believe the PS3 is where the Uncharted series started. It might have been PS2, but like games like Uncharted and stuff, which were just like massive, like like, for the time graphically intensive games. Like the PS3 basically allowed that to happen. And the original PS3 had backwards compatibility with PS2 and PS1 games, but the other two they lost that just because this was like so expensive that the reason that they were called Slim is that they basically just chopped out everything they thought they didn't need, like backwards compatibility. Then we come on to the PSP, which you'd think it would tie into the PS3, but mostly tied into the PS2. I believe so at least. Sorry. It was Sony's first handheld console. Given how like dominant Nintendo was at the time, the PSP sold really well. Many popular games were just based off all either direct ports or like spin-offs of PS2 and I believe some PS3 games. Unlike the DS, the PSP didn't actually have a touchscreen, which didn't have a touchscreen, so it kind of especially with like the if you see there the singular joystick kind of limited how you could play the games in some regards. It wasn't, as I said, it wasn't as successful as the DS, but like it sold like really well. I think like upwards of like 8 million stuff like that. And it was marketed towards having console level games on a handheld, which you could argue it didn't. That comes up to opinion in some cases. And then you come to the Xbox 360, which like the PS3 had multiple different versions as it aged. You have the original one, which suffered from, as we all know, the Red Ring of Death, which personally claimed by I think 7 of my consoles before I finally got like that one, which wouldn't have to replace it again. Which did definitely tarnish its relationship. It's an image in the public, even once you get these like the later versions, like I think that's the S and that's the E. Yes. Even once you get those, it was like people still didn't really trust it as much because like, oh, what if this also has a very very good death issue and stuff like that. As I said, like at the start of the generation, it kind of focused on being both a games console and especially with the media center, where you could play play the games and then on the same console swap directly over to watching the TV, whatever you watch at the time. And the 360s where the Kinect really came in, which I would say kind of sabotaged Xbox later down the line with. You'll see with the Xbox One and stuff with pricing, but a bit like. Now on to Generation 8. This will be the generation that I believe most of you will be most familiar with because it's got like the Switch, PS4, the Xbox One, like consoles which were like mainstream when you were like 10, 11. Just like the previous generation, each company was what was it, like Sony and Microsoft kind of conflicted with like how similarities between their consoles, but Nintendo especially were like trying to pull themselves away from like the main like competitive like regular gaming market to like advertise more towards like casual gamers, especially like the Wii U. You had like the gamepad and the Switch. You had the Switch. You can like play both on like as a handheld and as a console. And as I've put as a little at the bottom, you can argue the Switch is both the home console and the handheld. I, in this case, was kind of went for a bit of both. Like I'd say the regular Switch is just a console, whereas the Switch Lite is more of a handheld because you can't use it as a console. The Wii U, I would say, is probably Nintendo's most infamous failure, maybe besides the what's it called? I forgot its name. The red thing, the red but it was a complete and utter like commercial failure. Like it sold around like 18 million units, and it's like as a result of lackluster games and the fact that Wii users didn't really want to swap over from the Wii to the Wii U because they didn't really perceive much of an increase in like physically the console's powerful, but like because they've set themselves up like casual gaming, no one really cared about like the power of the console. They just cared if like the tennis, which meant that like no development. You can only see like some pretty good games releasing on the Wii U, Mario Kart 8, which went onto the Switch to be Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, basically the same game with the skin, and the Splatoon franchise started as well, which is one of Nintendo's best-selling games now on the Switch. But aside from that, there was barely any third-party games. It was very sparse. Like you had like a few, like, I believe a few of the Call of Duties were ported over to that, and like over to the Wii U, but like only really like a few ports, no like specific games developed for the console. But as you can see, like with the design of the gamepad, it definitely looks a lot like what you'd see in the Switch now, which I believe was like the framework for what will become the Switch. Just like clunky. And you got the 3DS, which I've said is kind of like the last generation of true handhelds, big quotation marks, because after this, handhelds kind of become portable PCs or like literally just like connecting to your actual console. But the DS is built upon what the 3DS and 2DS built upon what the DS have laid out for them with the touchscreen. They added a little circular pad for 3D movement, kind of D-pad, and 3DSs, only 3DSs obviously, had the 3D slider which used stereoscopic 3D, similar to again the thing I forgot the name of. Well, it improved upon the DS's performance, allowing for like bigger games, more powerful games, even a few console ports, I believe. Big problem, but lost my place. Despite the weird 3D, which not many people really use, the console, the handheld did go on to be like a commercial success. Just not as much as the DS, but certainly still enough to cement itself in history. Then we have the Switch, which is Nintendo's best ever selling console, and quoting on this, might be the best selling console ever. Question mark. The Switch is, as I said it before, a hybrid console, meaning like unless you're using the Switch Lite, you can use it as a handheld and as a home console, and it's continuation of like the Wii control designs, having the Joy-Cons and motion control meant that you could still have like sequels of the Wii Sports games on the Switch, for family gaming and stuff. And obviously, as we probably all know, that there is a big design flaw with the Joy-Cons being horrible drift. Like, I personally haven't had to replace it, but I have a few friends who've had to replace it like once every few months, which is horrible. But the Switch is actually like, I mean, as is trended with most Nintendo consoles, very low powered compared to like the other its competitors. But and it has the LED and the OLED improving on the screen and a bit of performance. But aside from that, not much to know about. And because of the really bad performance, the developers really had to optimize the games, which in some cases kind of like sacrifice the quality of the game. Like the graphics might look a bit bad, which to some people that doesn't matter. To some people it does matter. Again, it's up to opinion. And then we have the PS4 with the, again, don't quote me on this, I believe the first console to use, actually I think the PS3 used an APU, but it used an APU from I believe AMD, which combined the CPU and the GPU together to better optimize it for gaming. It's one of Sony's probably like biggest controller innovations was a touchscreen on the controller, which it works fine. Like it works fine. It's just it's very like situational. Like you'll find that you won't use it as much as you think you would. It supports remote play using the PS Vita, which we'll talk about the PS Vita in a bit, so I'll hold that for now. And the PS4, just like the PS3, PS2, continued improving the graphics to allow for bigger games like Last of Us, Spider-Man 2, Last of Us 2, a lot of twos. But yeah, oh, and also again I have the original Pro Slim, might have been more. Then we come to the Xbox One, which, as I said before, with the 360, was packaged with the Kinect, which drove up its price compared to like the PS4, leading to it to not sell as much as the PS4. Sorry, I know I'm yapping a bit. I'll try and go a bit faster. Yeah, the original Xbox One didn't sell as well. Its hardware wasn't as capable as its the consoles which followed it, and the Kinect basically just kind of useless, really. Nothing much I can say. And then we come on to the final generation. Don't worry, don't list over. Which is Generation 9 with the PS5, Xbox Series X, S, all that stuff, and the Steam Deck, Asus ROG. Names I can't remember because they're convoluted. And as I've wrote here, it may be the last like true thing with consoles as like manufacturers move towards focusing on like Microsoft owns Windows and is focusing a lot more on its Windows than it is on its Xboxes, and has ported like Game Pass from the Xbox One over to a PC, and you can just own PC Game Pass and not ever have to use an Xbox. And Sony is explicitly developing a OS for PCs using for the PlayStation and stuff, and handhelds are basically most handhelds are just like mobile computers at this point, but laptops. Oh, I'm starting with the handhelds. Quickly, you got the Steam Deck, which I'm sure most of you know as. No, it's a first handheld of its generation. Basically revolutionized. I would say revolutionized how handheld gaming is because, as I've said many times before, it's just a PC which you can hold in your hands, and it's just running like its own distribution of Linux. So it's had a desktop which you just use to watch YouTube and stuff. Then you have, I believe that's the Asus ROG. No, that's the Asus ROG, and that's the Lenovo Legion. They both run Windows and have better compatibility than what the Steam Deck has, because obviously Linux gaming, I would say, is improving its compatibility with Windows games, but Windows is unrivaled in terms of games compatibility and being able to just seamlessly run games. Yeah. Then you have the Series X and S, which well, the X was advertised as a gaming console, big, beefy, powerful, expensive as hell. It was like, I believe Generation 8 still kind of had the standard of running games at 30 FPS, whereas Generation 9 was solid, like we will run games at 60 FPS sometimes, because games aren't a lot nice all the time. The global chip shortage prevented Xbox from and PlayStation obviously from producing as many consoles as what I do, because of, like, I believe it's silicon shortage. Like, most people would have seen it in the GPU market, but yeah. As someone's written here, it looks a bit like a mini fridge. And I'll quickly just talk about the S. The S is more like a media center. Like, it's less powerful. You can just slot it into somewhere, and it can just you can play games on the side, but it's mostly going to be the time you can watch like Netflix or Hulu on. We have the PS5, which is built by Sony. It was again, just like the PS4, had the touchscreen on the. I just realized. Did I skip over the PS Vita? Don't worry. Oh yeah, sorry. It doesn't matter. It's not good anyway. So oh, I forgot to talk about PSVR. But the PS5 has the same touchpad-y everything. It feels more like an incremental update for the console. It's just more powerful, very similar UI, very similar controllers, just a bit bigger and more Xbox-like, really. But the increase in performance meant that like games like Astrobot, you can is it Astrobot Adventure? I don't have a PS5, so I don't know. But like you've seen the gameplay of it before. Like it can run. It has like insanely good an insanely good physics engine without really sacrificing much performance. And PlayStation VR 2 also links with a PC, so if you have a PSVR 2, you can use it both. If you have a good PC, you can use both on your PS5 and also PSVR, PC VR stuff. And also, it also suffered from the same not being in stock issue because of the chip shortage. And we come to the synopsis here, finally at the end. I would say the future looks fairly grim for consoles. There's more less emphasis put on them and more towards just porting the games off to PC. Games companies like Sony and Microsoft focusing more on their PC ventures. Besides Nintendo seems to be solidly still on its console stuff really. And as I say here, the only manufacturer seems to be moving towards making like a new console, which is just a console. It's a Switch 2, and we put a little picture there. Definitely not what it look like, but we can speculate. But yeah. Sorry if the end was a bit